are you open to sharing your political stance?
It is a bit closed-minded to be like a single issue voter.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm wearing some PJs right now.
Approve.
Welcome to the Mik Mike Crypto Cast. Feels a little weird saying this. This is our very first episode, Mike. How do you feel about it?
Is that the name we're going with for now? We'll throw it out there. We'll see what sticks.
I guess so. That's the name we're gonna go with until somebody in the comments section maybe gives us a better name. But
yeah, sounds
let's
good.
see if that one sticks.
Let's do it.
So obviously, you're no stranger to the podcast. You've been on the show before, and for those that are watching this, don't expect content around which coin is gonna moon. We're not gonna be focused so much on the price here. This is very long form content. It's gonna be some back and forth banter. So if you're up for the chat, stick around. If you're just looking for a moon bag, maybe there's some other channels that might be a little bit more of a fit for you. Is that right, Mike?
Agreed. Yeah. I think it's just a couple of reasons why, why I wanted to do this. And, you can definitely chime in on why you want to have these conversations. But first of all, I've got opinions on crypto stuff, right? We're in it. We're in this every day. All day, every day, and just love rapping about what's happening in crypto, what's the news out there, and there's another part of it that where being forced to talk about it, it's kind of this forcing function where there's so much news out there, right? And sometimes I just scan it, maybe bookmark it, I want to get back into read it a little bit later, but I forget and run out of time or whatever, right? So this kind of forces me to dig into some of the interesting stories out there that I'd want to dig into, but I just don't get a chance to. And then just discuss it, and just have fun discussing it. That's all.
And you said it best, have fun. And one of the things that I truly enjoy doing is having conversations. And something that's different about the other content on my channel is it's very much about, hey, let's stick to the facts. Here's what's happening. Here's how it's impacting you. And all that is great. I think it's needed. But sometimes it's good to take a step back and, kind of do a 30,000 foot overview about what's happening and view it from a organic conversation standpoint. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this, I'm going to call it a podcast, right? Because even though it's on YouTube, at the end of the day, it's a conversation. It's going to be informative. We're definitely going to talk about current events, but we're also going to be having some fun and we're going to be silly. For instance, I'm not going to lie, I'm wearing some PJs right now. Straight up, waist down, business up top. But yeah, this is all going to be just fun. And we're going to talk about what happened in the last week or so, which has been crazy, Mike. It's like watching a Spanish soap opera. It really is. Because I have no idea what happened and how we got back to where we are. But last week was literally insane. I mean, what do you make of everything that happened?
First of all, I was on vacation when this happened, and then when I opened up my app, I'm like, what? Vacation ruined. What the hell's going on? Yeah, look, I get the mechanics of it, right? When you have something that you've got a currency that was so cheap to borrow, and you've got this trade that is almost risk-free to make, and then that gets squeezed a little bit, and a lot of investors think that can get squeezed more, there's going to be a natural sell-off, right? And then that just kind of impacts downstream into all these assets, and then and then you get the risky assets like crypto get sold off. I don't know if there's any manipulation going on there, and I think actually going back to it is combined with not a great U.S. jobs report that came out. I think there's just this perfect storm. And look, I think this stuff just happens, right? And the timing of it seems so oddly perfect for those two events to cause this. Again, I don't know if there's manipulation, but I mean, I think just the investors' behavior of seeing this trade that they this profitable, almost risk-free trade becoming riskier, it's kind of natural for that sell-off to happen, right?
This poses the question: is Bitcoin at a point where it's considered to be that flight to safety that BlackRock talks about? And based on what happened, I don't think that we're quite there yet. I think the narrative is it's getting there. Like eventually we can look at it as a flight to safety. Once we get more institutions bought in, their clients are buying more of the ETFs. But I think right now it's still a bit early and it's still a high risk tech play. That's what it seems like right now. The traditional finance is looking at it as a high risk tech play.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah, we're still, and overall with crypto, we're still in, like the second inning overall, right, in the game. So I don't think anything that's still this early will ever get to the point where, or be viewed now as this, this flight to safety, right? The flight to safety is like the US dollar, right? So will we get there? I 100% believe it. It's just, we're just not there yet. Not at all.
Right. But I mean, there's still some good news. Well, first of all, we obviously made a comeback, although right now there's a lot of fear in the market, which I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I know that we're looking at a potential decrease of our interest rates. So some people are saying 25 basis points, some people are saying 50. Any thoughts on what you think we might see, or maybe zero? Who knows?
Man, I've given up on trying to predict interest rates, and I just think I know we'll get into this a little bit later, but there's so much on the line in the second half of 2024 with interest rates, with the election happening. There's so much just uncertainty around many different factors that impact crypto and just overall the economy that it's really tough to make a prediction on what's going to happen, and it's just wild. And I'm in DC, right? So like I can't get away from this stuff, even if I tried. So it is there's a lot riding on the next few months in many ways.
Yeah. So let's crack open that can of worms while we're on that topic. Because politics, it was never part of crypto before. It just wasn't. I think when people think about Web3, they think about crypto. We come from all different places, different perspectives, and we all love and appreciate each other, at least those that work in the industry. And I never believed that politics gets in the way. And I think that stays true now. People have difference of opinions. People might be a one issue voter. But at the end of the day, there's mutual respect for each other. So I'm curious to hear from you, Mike. Are you open to sharing your political stance? I'll share mine. And then I would love to have a healthy debate. I hope that we're on the opposite sides here, because I want to have a healthy debate about just the pros and cons of both situations, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Care to take a crack at that?
I will say that I am not a single issue voter. Okay. I'm not a single issue voter, and I think it is a bit closed-minded to be like a single issue voter. You have to have a balanced approach. We don't live our lives in a single silo of our jobs with talking about crypto. We all have families. We all have different backgrounds. I'm not a single issue voter. And I also, it's very ironic because, I'll say this now, like when we had Trump versus Biden, when Biden was still in the race, we had this chance for an independent party, right, outside of the Republican and Democratic Party, to really actually make an impact on this election, right? And to be honest, like I've been very much on the side of, I really like RFK and most of his stances, right? And here's another thing: it's like I'm also not a single issue non-voter as well. Like I do not like RFK's like conspiracy theories, but I'm not willing to like say, oh, just because of that, you're not fit for office, right? But there was so much on the line between like Trump and Biden that both sides couldn't like stand to have the other person in the office. That in this election where the candidates were like so bad, at least thought of by the other side, that there was too much at risk for that third party to actually make an impact. Right? It's just it's such an ironic thing. So yes, I like to talk about it a little bit, but I will just want to say that I hope that most of us can kind of have like a holistic view on why we vote and not just focus on a single thing.
So first of all, RFK, I don't know too much about him. I keep telling myself that I will look into him. I would look into his crypto stance, and I know that he appeared at the Bitcoin conference and had a very bold statement about some of the things that he's looking to do, and Trump, of course.
Yes.
But at the same time, there is a part of me that is wondering why his family is not willing to endorse him. I don't know what those reasons are, but it is kind of is giving me a little bit of like a pause there.
Pause,
right?
sure.
Yeah. Sure. I think no matter how you feel about Trump, one thing that is positive is that he brought crypto into that political arena, right? And now the Democrats are having to really think hard. Do we really want to oppose this moving forward? And you're starting to see more stuff come out from the Harris campaign about her potential perspective on crypto, which I don't think she publicly came out and said anything, but there's been like some rumblings, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So just to touch on a point, like, yes, Trump absolutely brought crypto into the limelight in terms of an important topic and an important group of voters that needs to be addressed, right? Part of it is like whether you believe he truly is going to do the things, or like because he's had a kind of checkered past with crypto, saying Bitcoin is useless, etc. But then he launched an NFT collection, so peaks and valleys there, right? But yeah, I think that's a great thing where I think crypto it just has become such a hot topic, and he definitely has caused it to be something that to bring it into the limelight and just to show that it is something that needs to be discussed and addressed. So is that forcing Kamala's hand to talk about it? I think it is a little bit, right? She hasn't come out and said, oh, this is my stance on crypto. And I don't think Walz has done that either. But yeah, like you said, she's actually had some of an advisor. She brought in, I think, David Plouffe, who was like a former Obama aide, and he was on the Binance Global Advisory Board. So like that's obviously someone who's got a lot of knowledge about the industry. There's this whole, I don't think it's of her doing, but there's this whole Crypto for Harris initiative that we've got a lot of, you've seen kind of a lot of people from Silicon Valley backing Trump. Now you've got Silicon Valley and crypto advocates, backing Kamala. So yeah, definitely lots going on there, and I think it's important to have those conversations. And I think it would be a big mistake to ignore the conversation about crypto in a campaign.
I agree. In regards to Walz, I'm looking here. So there were a few things that are potentially red flags, unless he maybe changed his stance. So he does support.
Politicians have known to do that sometimes.
You're absolutely right. So definitely a wait and see. But in the past, he has supported strict regulations for the crypto industry. He implemented rules in Minnesota to cap daily transactions at crypto kiosks. There's been like a return of donations, which some people are looking at that as like him being anti-crypto, and then just classifying, likely against classifying cryptocurrencies as a legal form of payment. So there's a few things out there that are kind of brewing for him that don't necessarily bode well. But you're right. People are. It would be very narrow-minded of us to be a one single issue type of decision. But if you think about people that are in crypto, and a lot of them are like early 20s, not many responsibilities, don't even have a family yet. All they're thinking about is, I just want to get rich so then I can do all those other things. And I think that's why we get to a place where some people, and especially if they're doing this every single day, day in, day out, where they do kind of get lost in it and they do become a one single issue voter on this topic.
Yeah. There's again, this is like, there's everyone's coming from different backgrounds. Everyone's got different goals, right? And I think that if all you are thinking about your bags, I get it. I don't necessarily agree with you, but look, like that's what's driving your vote, and that's your prerogative. So I think if we're thinking about just the impact that it can have on payments, and the impact it can have on the emerging markets, and the positive benefits of technology and all that kind of stuff, you kind of tend to have a broader view of things, and try to take in understand different aspects of it. So I think what we personally what I'd like to see is just open-mindedness and dialogue about it, right? I actually don't want to see necessarily from the Democratic campaign is just like straight out, oh yeah, we love crypto, because that is just disingenuous, right? Because you've had this situation over the last few years where, admittedly, the Democratic Party has been, pretty vicious towards us, right? And whether or not that is driven by a few bad actors, or if there's something just underlying an underlying approach to it that is just not beneficial to us, that remains to be seen. But I think being open to a dialogue and understanding and engaging, I think that's what I would rather see, as opposed to just like a full-blown approval of crypto, because I would just find that 180 pretty disingenuous.
Meanwhile, it appears that the narrative has been Trump is for crypto, let's vote for Trump. Harris, not so much, therefore she doesn't get as many votes. But if you look at Polymarket, right now, Harris is beating out Trump 51% to 46%. And I don't know if it's a coincidence that ever since the Democrats have been coming out and being a little bit more open to crypto, but I mean, I also don't know how accurate Polymarket is. I don't think it wasn't around last elections. So it remains to be seen how accurate these numbers are. But that's the other part of this whole story. If Polymarket, if these are fairly accurate numbers, could this be the way of being able to predict the future now?
I think prediction markets, it's obviously still very early, and I think there's going to be. I haven't taken a look at it lately on the amount of liquidity on there, but obviously that's just like anything in crypto or any with betting, like that's going to be a big determinant of how effective these prediction. If the liquidity is low, they're obviously going to be easily manipulated, and that's kind of the funny thing. Where I don't know if you've seen where when Polymarket predicted whatever, Trump winning or Biden dropping out of the race, it was deemed, the new form of news, the tell all truth of the state of the world. And then now that it shows that Harris is leading Trump, now there's like market manipulation by the Democrats. Like, come on, you can't have it both ways, right? So, I think we're getting there, where these prediction markets are going to be very effective tools for just real time news and real time predictions. But I think we're not quite there yet, and but and I know there's going to be some markets where prediction markets are better than others. But yeah, it really comes down to that, like liquidity and making sure that those they're not manipulable.
I think prediction markets it's also tapping into the social aspect, right? And that's on the rise. Meanwhile, mainstream media is on a decline. So can you imagine a world where, whether it be the Republican administration or the Democrat, where they're betting on themselves on these prediction markets just to kind of paint this narrative of them winning. And that's like the new marketing strategy now, instead of spending millions on these ads on mainstream media.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit of like 4D chess, right? I mean, I would have never thought of that, but it's it would be crazy if that's happening, and it would be like super genius if that was happening. I hope it's not, but it is. It's pretty entertaining as well if that's happening.
I mean, you can't stop it, right? Which the other side of this that I'm also thinking about, where you're kind of betting on yourself, is this whole notion of having Bitcoin on the reserve, and you're essentially are able to print money and then buy more Bitcoin with that money. I mean, who's to stop a government from doing that now?
Yeah.
Something else that I've been thinking about. So I think that we need a little bit more guardrails. I mean, I know people don't like regulation, but some of these things, in order for us to, at least in the prediction market side, look, if governments are printing money and they're buying Bitcoin, I mean, I can't necessarily, because I'm a believer in Bitcoin, right? So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But when it comes to, changing the sentiment by betting on yourself in prediction markets, I mean, eventually you probably have to get to some form of like regulatory framework once it becomes big enough.
Yeah. And then, I mean, this is a big, interesting philosophical debate, right? I mean, you mentioned Bitcoin, I mean, a lot of people's reason for buying Bitcoin and, is kind of to be anti-government, right? To work outside of the systems that the government has set for us, the financial systems, right? And then now, then if you're talking about, the government buying Bitcoin, or, BlackRock buying Bitcoin, and even though it's adoption, is it the right adoption? Is it the right people that we want to be buying Bitcoin? Or were these the people that we were quote unquote against from the very beginning, right? So I don't know. It's definitely there's definitely a catch-22 there, and now you're talking about Polymarket, where you're looking at prediction markets where you were trying to function outside of mainstream media, outside of potential government-controlled media, and then potentially asking for guardrails around that because it's impacting our elections, right? It's like it's a kind of a similar problem, but it again, that's kind of like the weird dichotomy of the industry that we're in, right? Where we're working so hard for mass adoption, and a lot of our industry is anti-government, and anti big bank. But what if the adoption comes from governments and big banks, right? Like that's it's a weird problem to deal with, right?
It's like we don't like the banks, but at the same time, when we hear about Fidelity or somebody adopting Bitcoin, we're all for it, right? We're celebrating, and it's just You're right. It's just like weird kind of double-edged sword there, where we don't really know what to think. But I think most of us would say that if we're working hard in this industry and that hard work is paying off, most likely we're happy. Speaking of hard work, XRP Ripple, they've been working really hard with their case against the SEC, and I saw it made the news a little bit. It was kind of overshadowed by everything else that's been happening, but I think there was like a $125 million settlement, and they're free to go. And they're coming out with a stable coin, I believe it's RLUSD. I like how they put in an L in there so it doesn't look like the Russian US dollar. And things are looking well for them. But if you just look on the charts, they're not necessarily like taking off. In fact, they haven't seen their all-time highs for, I don't know, like last cycle, maybe even the one before that. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of development that's happening there from what I hear, but we're not necessarily seeing that just yet. People are really focused on the price, but I think the development itself is coming. I don't know if you have any thoughts on XRP Ripple.
I mean, I saw it did, right after the that news came out, it did do a pretty big pop. I think it went up like 25%. I don't know what's been happening over the weekend, but I think this is a pretty big deal, right? I think you did mention it wasn't quite, it definitely made some headlines, but there was so much stuff happening last week. The SEC was seeking $2 billion from Ripple, and they got fined 125 million. That's not, it's not peanuts, but obviously it's certainly way better than the 2 billion. And and what's also is like there was an injunction placed against future securities laws violations. I just think that the courts are seeing the approach that the SEC is taking to a lot of these crypto protocols, and they're just saying it's wrong. It's wrong. There are certain situations, I think, specifically in Ripple, I believe it was like the institutional sales was getting fined, right, as potential securities violations, but the retail sales is not. I believe that's how it is. So they're not totally in the clear, but I just think that the courts are seeing SEC's approach by this enforcement by punishment as just a bad, just they don't have anything to stand on, and a lot of these court cases are going to the way of the towards the crypto protocol. So I think this is pretty big, right? This case has been going on forever, and I think Ripple is mostly in the clear now, and I think it could set a pretty good precedence for the future of crypto protocols being built in the U.S.
And perhaps maybe this could be a catalyst for altcoin season. Everyone seems to be waiting for that, right? So whether it be we got to wait for Bitcoin to hit its all-time highs, or we need like a big narrative to take off. I mean, I think, like you said, it is something that's pretty it made a splash in the news. And so it will be interesting to see how that continues.
I did see a pretty bad chart. I forgot who it was from. I don't know if it was the Blocker Coin Metrics about like how DeFi is basically like so dead right now. And that's kind of tough to swallow. Like, I think DeFi is it's just one of those use cases of crypto that is, at least to me, is so clear and so beneficial. Just being able to access all these, financial primitives, without middlemen is something. It's just one of those quintessential use cases, and it's tough to see that hasn't picked up yet. So I think just in line with those altcoins, maybe there is something that is coming soon that will hopefully not only just help altcoins, those price recover, but increase the use of these DeFi dApps. But yeah, let's hope to see that activity pick up again.
You actually something that you made me think about is there's one specific altcoin that seems to be in the past week or so just completely woke up relative to the rest of the market, and that's Sui. So Sui, for those that don't know, it's a layer 1 blockchain. It's built using the Move language, which is derived from Rust, which is used in Solana. So a lot of people are comparing it to Solana, saying that it could be the Solana killer. I don't know. People were saying that Solana is the Ethereum killer. That remains to be seen, although some people do think that it'll flip Ethereum. But anyways, I was looking at Sui, and I know from a tech perspective, it's really good. It's got strong backing. Raul Paul, he is one of the advisors. Ex Goldman Sachs, I believe. But I'm also thinking about the next token unlock, which is coming up in September. And so I'm also wondering if this is just the narrative to tee up that token unlock that's getting ready to roll out. So question here is, what do you make of Sui? Do you think long term it could be a promising blockchain?
I don't know any more than the next person about it in terms of like their ecosystem growth or anything like that. I know that it's got a big war chest, and with that comes and now it's got a little bit of a hype. I'm actually looking at it right now. It's up 13% just today, which is pretty good. So I think when you have momentum, when you have a good war chest, I think that's obviously a couple of aspects that can certainly increase the chances of success. That being said, there's so much competition out there. We all know that. Of course you've got the Ethereums, you got the Solanas, and then if you still have all these L1s, you can still have all these L2s. They're all fighting for still relatively small amount of developers, small amount of end users. You know, so I think just there's certainly things they've got going for them, and then there's other L1s, L2s that are pretty newer ones that are pretty hyped up, like Monad and Barachain, getting pretty close to mainnet. So yeah, I mean, I still think that personally, if you talk about infrastructure, I still think, like I said, we're in the second inning of all this. So I still believe that there are better iterations of infrastructure that can and will be built. I just think in the short term, it's tough to we need to see a lot more overall industry growth to accommodate all of these chains, and I think we'll get there. But at this point, there's a ton of competition. This battle for developers and users that it's going to be a battle.
There's a ton of competition, and also I saw that the VCs, in terms of the amount of deals that are actually going through in the funding, it's actually going down. The size of these deals is growing. So it appears that the VCs are putting more eggs in a particular basket and not so much a spray and pray approach. VCs are getting more selective. That's what it appears. And this would be a good question for you, because you are a VC. You're currently working on raising for a fund. So you're kind of feet on the ground. Like, what are you hearing from just talking to other VCs? Are you seeing the same thing? Does that match what I'm seeing in the news?
I definitely think there is a bit of a liquidity crunch in terms of LPs funding VC funds, and there's kind of a flight to safety there. Okay, and I'll get to how it kind of trickles down. LPs, like family offices and fund of funds and pension funds and all those that provide funds for VC firms to invest into startups, they are primarily the flight to safety, where they are going with the larger, more established VC firms. And so those large, more established firms are having no problems raising very large rounds, very large funds. Now it's the emerging managers, the ones who are just launching Fund 1, Fund 2, they are having much tougher times raising their funds. Now, how does that translate into funding rounds? You're getting these large VC firms with big funds. They're raising their big funds. So they're deploying larger checks. So they're making bigger bets because they need to deploy the capital that they've raised. So you are seeing a little bit less of people. You're seeing bigger rounds into either established protocols or kind of more hyped protocols. And you're hearing about those huge rounds. Like I mentioned like Monad raised like 225. I think Barachain raised like 100 mil a few months ago. So yeah, you're definitely seeing that. And maybe some of the earlier rounds, they're just less less well known. I think the money's still getting deployed, and I think there's a little bit of just this kind of weird market where we saw Bitcoin balloon earlier in the year, and we thought we were kind of going into this full blown bull market. Valuations for startups kind of went up in lockstep with that, but then now it's been kind of choppy, and it's got to come back to earth. So kind of long way to say that money is still getting deployed, but I think that there was a bit of a balancing act between startups raising at higher valuations when we thought a bull run was coming, and now it's coming back to earth. And people, I think overall VCs need, we all still need to be, we got to have conviction. We got to do our due diligence. And I think the market has, the choppy market kind of has forced a lot of VCs to be a little pickier.
Yeah, and perhaps the other part of this is something new, right? Seeing new technology. A lot of people are complaining that we're not really going to see the next quote unquote bull run. And what I mean by that is just like that parabolic phase until we get, some new technology that really takes off. And so perhaps maybe from the VC perspective, you hear about chain abstraction and there's like some buzzwords out there, but maybe they're waiting for the next big thing and they're not really seeing it just yet from a technology perspective.
Yeah, and I think also you're looking at a bit of a move towards towards consumer apps, right? Like I mentioned, this whole, do we have too much infrastructure? Do we need to focus more on consumer apps? And that is that's very different different operating principles, different growth principles, different set of knowledge that maybe a lot of crypto VCs don't have, because the main focus has been more on infrastructure and on building developer communities, as opposed to more focus on developer communities than end user communities. So I mean, I think that's definitely needed. But on the flip side, like you said, like there's a lot of things in infrastructure and a lot of problems there. Like you mentioned, chain abstraction, overall just improving the UX, and I think that there's still a lot of work to be done there. But certainly, I think the VCs and the operators who have the expertise to usher in many more consumer apps should absolutely do that, because that's going to be definitely needed in kind of the next iteration of our market.
And I think at that point, that's when the gaming will pick back up, because that's kind of been in the shadows all cycle really. But there's been a lot of great games that are being built on a lot of different chains, and it's hard to compete with like the Call of Duties of the world, but some of the stuff that's being built, like, it's pretty cool. Like it really can compete from like a graphics perspective. I just don't know about the UX yet. And I also heard that there's a game that came out on PlayStation, first one that actually has a Web3 component to it. So things are, brewing on the gaming side as well. But to your point, I think the focus has been around infrastructure up to this point. And now I think it'll just be like a blast wide open, and everyone's going to see everything that's being, done over the last few months and years.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about gaming, I don't blame anyone, because this was like the first iteration of gaming, in the last bull run. Like the games were so bad, right? Not only just like the games themselves, the design of the games, but like everything that you had to do that involved the wallet, or like an NFT or some asset in game, you had to approve everything in your wallet, right? So I think in that first iteration where this a Web3 game was new, there was more financialization of it, like it got a lot of traction primarily because of the financialization part of it. So the games could kind of get away with being pretty shitty. But now, I think we learned that, once the bear market hits, a lot of people, the token prices dump, and a lot of people just don't want to play games that are crappy. So now, the game developers need to kind of go on the other side of that spectrum and make the game focus on the game and the UX first, and then layer on the financialization as kind of a secondary component of it. Because, like you said, you can't compete with all these game franchises that have been around, that have amazing gameplay, super realistic, just with the financialization part of it. So I think the game developers really need to build a great game first, and then have the financialization part of it on as a secondary feature.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Mike, we just completed our very first episode. I feel like cracking a bottle of champagne to celebrate.
Yeah, man. And I think this like pretty much went exactly how I thought it would go, right? It's just we obviously had some interesting topics to discuss, because we always do in crypto. But it just, we spoke our minds, and other topics popped up, and we talked about those, and just, I had a ton of fun, man.
Same. Had a ton of fun, and we're gonna do this. What do we say? Every other week, right?
I think we started with every couple of weeks. I think enough stuff happens. We could probably do one every day, but enough stuff happens every couple of weeks that we can kind of focus on the big topics and rap about those. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see if we get a bunch of likes and comments. We'll have to probably switch that up to every week. But first one's done, and we'll take it one episode at a time. Mike, This was a real pleasure. This is the Mik and Mike Crypto Cast, and this was a lot of fun.
And if anyone's got better name suggestions, just put them in the comments, because that's what we're going with for now.
Yeah, let us know. Bye.
All right, man. See you.